What's up, everybody? We're back at the high five. This week, we're diving into the most annoying of topics, but also a very fun one. Top five pet peeves, or as Josh was calling them earlier this week, top five Larry Davids. Even the title pet peeve was annoying Brian, and he wanted to name the episode something else. Brian, did you have any other potential names, or are we sticking with pet peeves?
Grinders of gears. Gear grinders.
For me, for top five gear grinders. So for me, there's definitely an art to complaining. It's one of my preferred methods of bonding. So I'm looking forward to this topic, having spent a lot of time with both of you complaining about pretty much everything. Brian, I think you got an uphill battle to climb as Josh is coming from the Jewish people who are master complainers. I would say they really mastered the art.
We know how to kvetch.
Kvetch, yeah, that's right. You know how to kvetch. So,
What does that mean?
That's Yiddish for complain, I believe. Yeah. So, should we just jump right into it? I'm ready to rock and roll if you guys are.
I'm ready. My gears have been sufficiently ground.
Yeah, I was already annoyed by that intro, so I'm ready to go.
Okay, let's start with the criteria. Josh, what were your criteria for picking out the top pet peeves?
Felt like this week was pretty self-explanatory. It's just shit I don't like. It kind of needs to be stuff that's not too complicated to correct. I feel like something somebody could easily accomplish. Also, stuff I don't do or rarely do myself. So, like talking endlessly about a country where you just studied abroad or spent some time, really annoying. Bringing it up in every convo. But it's also hard to avoid, and it's something I'm guilty of myself at times. So those are really like transformative experiences, or should be at least. Things like that I would have left off the list. But otherwise, it's just annoying shit.
I was wondering if either of you guys would do top pet peeves that you hear a lot. Like a lot of people have these pet peeves, or if you were keeping it personal. It sounds like Josh, you're keeping it personal. Brian, are you also keeping it personal?
Yeah, these are things that are on my list that I've definitely talked to other people about, but they're because one thing that I thought about was like some of mine are very New York specific because of just the amount of interactions with other people that you there. So I was thinking about like is it too much specific to me, but other people I think have them. So
New York specific list actually number one on my high five. Most annoying thing. No, I'm just kidding. I would like to say though, mostly just about me, but I do have legal precedent cited for at least one of my five.
What is that? Getting divorced?
I will leave that until later. No spoilers.
Sure. Okay, fair. No spoilers. So criteria, we've got Josh with not too complicated to correct. So something that the person could easily do differently, and stuff that he doesn't do himself normally. Brian's criteria was New York specific annoyances. Were there others?
No,
Brian?
I think I agree with the things that are fairly easy to correct. One, I was just saying that my list, when I was reflecting on it, is very New York specific interactions. But in terms of criteria, I think it's just things that people could like very easily not do, and they lack self-awareness to make that correction.
I got you. Okay, so they lack the self-awareness. That's good. New York specific. I'm interested to see what these New York specific peeves are of yours. But I also say New York, very populous city, very popular city. So appealing to our audience there, which I like. Philadelphia, not as many people. So I'm glad that you stuck with New York specific annoyances there.
But per capita, a greater population, I would say.
That's definitely one of my pet peeves. People who say stuff like that.
Sounds like a loser this week, Brian.
using Latin when they don't know what it means.
Oh yeah.
We know Brian has that Latin experience from his days in school.
I
Okay.
think you are an ignoramus, which I'm pretty sure is Latin.
Okay, so I'm gonna move us into the coin toss, and this coin toss is brought to you by email marketing. If you think too clearly and your correspondences are all up to date, you need email marketing. Get out there and get some free shit that you don't need with email marketing. Sign up for email marketing by creating an email address and writing it down literally anywhere online. Email marketing, where my AI can talk to your AI. All right, thanks email marketing for the sponsorship. Now
Okay,
I'm getting
Brett is getting inappropriate here.
What are you trying to show us?
Oh, sorry.
We are
Moving
not
the
that kind of podcast, people.
Sign up for
just getting
that extra content on our OnlyFans.
I'm just getting my 20 cent Australian quid, or 20 pence, as they say. And Josh as the reigning champion. I believe it's 2-2 now. So we're in a rubber match episode.
Three to
Josh, you
two
get
if
to
you
call
count
it.
my small council win, but yeah, I will call heads.
Heads, it is. I dropped it. I fumbled it.
Good
I fumbled
toss.
it.
You get just whatever it lies, whatever it
A night
says.
after the Hall of Fame game, and Brett is already fumbling.
It's heads. So Josh, you could go first or you can defer.
I'm gonna defer. I'm gonna let Brian go first this week.
All right, Brian.
How generous of you. Okay. My number 5 is people who walk around with their heads buried in their phones and just totally oblivious of what's going on around them. I think it's especially bad when you're walking up out of the subway and you can see it's just like this long line of people that are all walking like extremely slowly, swaying side to side so it's hard to pass them because they're just scrolling through their phone. And I hate it because it's so hot in the subway that when I'm getting out, I'm not really interested in reading stuff on my phone. Like I just want to get out of from underground. So it gives me this kind of like lemming feeling where we're all just like shuffling up the stairs, like to and from work. And it just reminds me of like the rat race of life. And but the worst part is that they're very hard to pass because they're just taking up a lot of space. So sometimes if the stairs are open, I'll walk past and I'll say, "Get the fuck off your phone," and keep going.
That is extremely annoying in general, not just the subway situation, but on the street,
Yeah,
in a building, in the hallways.
I think
I also have this.
it's most pronounced in the subway, but yeah, the street definitely a part of it.
I also have like the tech neck fear for myself as I'm getting older that I'm just gonna slowly like punch lower and lower because I'm looking down and my spine is just curving down over time. So I try to be conscious of that, but I know I'm sure I'm guilty of it sometimes, just looking at the phone on the sidewalk, walking my dog, probably reading some stupid text message from one of you guys.
It
Yeah,
also
that's a good one.
I also think you just look like a target. You know, if somebody wanted to mug you, it would be so easy.
I was actually doing the phone thing on the sidewalk, and someone just stopped walking and wait. And it's like there's a small section of this sidewalk where I live, and they just stood there and waited and just looked at me until I was like, oh, and I got startled and had to walk around them.
Wow,
It was a power move
what
on
a
their part.
hero, American patriot.
Yeah.
Did you get that guy's information?
No, I was scared.
Respect to that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Josh, you a phone looker or what?
I try not to. I also think it makes you an incredible mark, but sometimes I am guilty of it for sure, particularly when walking dogs or out on a walk on my own. Though I do try to look up as much as possible. And I feel like I continue to walk pretty fast when I'm doing that. If I could launch into my list here, I actually have one that is very similar to this. I'm going to go a little bit out of order here. I'm going to skip down to my number three. So for those of you listening at home, maybe get out a pen and paper. This could get a little confusing. You're going to have to keep track of my order. So I'm going to start with number three on my list, and that is not making room for somebody to pass you, generally on the left, whether that's because you're on your phone or you're just too slow or you're just too oblivious for other reasons. I'm thinking like too wide sidewalk walking when there's only room for too wide. So people can't like pass you, even if they're coming directly at you and they see you, or you're coming up behind them. Too wide escalator standing, as Brian mentioned, needlessly taking up the aisle while people are trying to board a plane. Very annoying. Driving slow in the fucking left lane. Poor run blocking in football, I even feel like would qualify here. All this shit, and I cite as precedent. I mentioned before I would bring in previous legal cases, the case of Ludacris v. Bitch, and I rest my case.
That's a good one. That's there's a lot of different things that fall under that umbrella. Just people not getting out of the way. I like it. I don't love that you went to number three first, especially for the audio version of this cast. But I'll recap it for the listeners.
I think that just makes it your number five. That's the way.
Right.
That's the way numbers work.
Yeah, we're putting that at number five.
On the fly readjustment, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
It can move to get out of the way for a new number three. Let's put it that way.
That's good. That's good. Okay. Brian, back to you.
This one is a very online pet peeve. And I would call it internet police culture. And so it's whenever you see something on Twitter or on Reddit where just somebody makes like a general statement, like it, and people feel the need to chime in and be like, oh, well, actually, like some people don't. So like you basically like trying to invalidate what you're saying by like coming up with an exception. So I'll give you an example. It's like, if I were on Reddit or Twitter and I was complaining about like, oh, all of my like, all the plants that I have at home are dying. Like I'm having a hard time, like, and it's, for whatever reason. And then having somebody like chime in on the comments and be like, well, actually, like some people, when their plants die, it's like reminds them of a generational trauma that you should like be aware of, and you shouldn't talk about like things dying in your home that way. And just just people who are like who want to be on there like, well, actually, kind of like what Josh did earlier, and what he did in real life. And it's just, it feels like this weird, like people just like exist online only to do this, and it like here's another one that's been going on recently. So I'm deep in the Williamsburg subreddit, and there's been a lot of people like complaining about, rightfully so, I think, just like the rise in like muggings that have happened the last like couple months, and it's just like the summer, like more people get mugged in the summer. But then people being like, yeah, there's a lot of just like people riding these motorized scooters with like full like face coverings, like so you can't tell who they are, and it's the middle of July, it's like 95 degrees. And people are like, yeah, if you see those guys, you should probably like cross the street or like walk away because it's like, it's kind of suspicious. And then other people being like, well, but like actually like they wear those so that like, what if there's like a lot of dust in the street while they're like out riding around? And there's like, you just like 97 degrees outside and you're covered head to toe. What do you think you're out there doing?
Wow, things are getting spicy out in Williamsburg.
Complainsburg, as some people have dubbed it.
Kvetchburg.
Yeah.
It's an anecdotal
Josh,
response in the argument.
I was gonna say you're really up to speed on the seasonality of mugging data.
It's commonly accepted as a fact that in the summer muggings and crime increase.
Well, actually, some people like getting mugged, so
Well, actually, yeah,
we could call that the well actually pet peeve.
I think that's the name. And I had to mute myself because I was so tempted to well actually that whole little segment there.
I I find this to be. I was calling this pet peeve similarly. The N of one, using a statistical term. When my I'll be chatting mostly about politics with my family. My mom will come up with an example to negate my argument with just it's an N of one argument. Um, so not really data driven. It's just an anecdote. But we're calling that internet police culture slash the well actually.
Yeah, and by the way, I feel like anecdotal evidence is very accepted on this podcast.
That's the only evidence we have.
Yeah, we're light on.
Anecdotally, anyway. Yeah.
Well, actually, I do some research.
Actually, I did quite a bit of research on the first episode.
Yeah, you did. That was good. That one time. Okay, Josh, you're number four.
All right, my number four is sending me links to videos with absolutely no context. I don't have time to watch a 5-minute video to hopefully discover the reason you felt the need to text it to me. The messaging apps, they know this is annoying, so they've tried to put like previews now when you send any kind of like social link. But still not enough when we're talking about sometimes lengthy video. I feel like even more than 30 seconds is like, what do you want me to take away from this video? Unless you preface it by saying, I want you to see if you catch the thing that I thought interesting about this video, then it maybe feels a little bit more like a game. But don't just send me a fucking link to a video. All right. Annoying.
So you didn't watch what I sent over last night?
Definitely not.
Okay.
I also
I've been-
didn't watch it, but this is a ridiculous complaint. You're complaining about people thinking of you and sending something to you and not preparing you sufficiently for it.
Correct.
So I started prepping my wife with the kind of reaction I wanted from her when it comes to sports things, because it's just me and her living together in our house, and I'll be watching sports, and I'm a human, so I want to share with the person around me. And I just say, if I'm watching a Kings game, for example, I'll say, okay, I need sports reaction. That was a good quarter. And she gives me the appropriate reaction. So it's kind of like what you're talking about, Josh. I should start telling you the reaction I want when I send you the video. I can start doing that from now on. So the reaction I'm looking for from the video I sent you guys last night is, haha, you're funny for finding that video and identifying it as a funny thing that I would also find funny. So that's the kind of reaction I'm looking for.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, even like this video is funny, give it a watch, a little bit. Just don't send me only the link, But yeah, what you're saying about you and your wife reminds me of like you playing one of those old like electric keyboards and you're like pressing one particular button for a particular sound from your wife.
Yes.
That's pretty good work by you.
Yeah. The wife keyboard.
Casio, the Casio.
She's going to love this episode.
By the way, do send this link to the podcast video to as many people as you know and give them no context. I will say that is encouraged, in fact.
That's a good point.
Trigger warning, Josh.
Just don't send it to me. Yeah.
Okay. Brian, you're up.
This one's another one in crowded places that I think it's easily solvable, but I don't understand what goes through people's heads when they do this, is playing stuff out loud in a crowded place like the subway. And I grew up taking the subway, so it's like I've seen this for my entire life, but I I don't understand why people feel the need to DJ the subway cart. Like I feel, but I feel like it's gotten worse because of phones. You know, like now everybody has one. Before you used to need like a speaker, and so
And that
now,
was cool
yeah,
to
yeah.
have the speaker. Yeah, this is a good one.
But now it's like kids on iPads on planes. There's a guy in my gym that, if you're listening, fuck you. You do this shit all the time. And he just plays his shitty music out loud, so loud that I can hear it through my noise canceling headphones. And it just the lack of self awareness that there's no need to play music or sounds for anybody else. And sometimes it's not even music. Sometimes it's just like TikTok shit. And yeah, the people who market headphones are not doing a good enough job. You guys need to expand your user base.
My least favorite of this style is when I'm out hiking and someone goes by with their speakers playing. The purpose of me being out there is to get away from technology, to get away from those sounds, to just relax. And I hate those people.
Yeah, and
That's
the
my
fucking birds chirping too. Like, shut up. You know.
Are you
I just hope.
are you just walking by with your head buried in your phone and you're like, oh, this fucking guy with this fucking music is
Yeah,
so annoying.
fucking nature trying to interrupt the sound of my phone is really fucking annoying. But if the guy at Brian's gym is listening to this, please remix that part of the podcast and play it out loud at the gym. That would be classic.
That would be good.
I'd
I
appreciate
really,
that.
I agree with you, Brian. This is a really annoying one. I was on a plane and I was in the very back row, so I had to book last minute. The stewardess, when she sat in the back, she was doing that, and that's even worse because she's in a position of power. She was watching a video on loud, and I was sitting around a few Karens, and I could just see them tightening up and their necks craning back, like looking back. It was bad. It was a bad flight experience because of that.
You should have looked to them and be like, well, actually, for some people, wearing headphones is really really painful for them, and we should be more understanding of her needs.
I should have. I should have.
Did
Okay,
any,
Josh.
did anybody act?
I acted. Yeah, I was the one that acted. I felt the pressure of everybody around me, and
Not all heroes
it
wear
was
capes.
she. This she was fine. She turned it off, but she did not. She didn't want to be there, and she didn't want to look at me. She didn't want to hear from me, but the mission was successful in that she turned off. I just turned around and asked her politely if she might turn that off because we can all hear it.
It sounds like you handled it like an adult.
I tried to. I tried to. Josh, your new number 3, please.
Yeah, this has officially skipped. I left number 4 in place, so has rocketed up the charts from number 5 to number 3, and that is the overuse of buzzwords, particularly in corporate environments. So this kind of aligns with what you were talking about earlier, Brett, of people using Latin words that they don't really understand. I sometimes feel like people don't even really understand what certain buzzwords mean, but still use them, like gaslighting. Brian, for example, I assume he has no idea what gaslighting means and still uses it liberally. This isn't as annoying, though, because you don't always hear that in like a corporate environment, which I think makes it particularly like soul crushing. And Brett, we've talked about this many times with a common friend who I assume said no to doing this podcast before you reached out to me. And I just read a big article about how everyone in corporate America is now using the term double click instead of, something that actually makes sense to regular human beings, like going deeper or adding context or anything else that, the common man or woman would say. No, we now have to say double click on something, even though we're talking about using our actual voices and not our fucking computers.
Overuse of business jargon is complaining about that is a favorite pastime of mine. I could go for an hour by myself on all the different words that I hate. My number 1 right now is greenlit or greenlight something instead of approve. This is
Yeah, if
coming
you
from
work in
my
Hollywood, fine, that's acceptable. If you work at some fucking broy tech firm, come on, find a new term. I knew I was pandering a little bit with this one, Brett. I knew my audience here,
yeah.
currying favor with the judges.
Are you guys have heard find the solve? Is that one?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's probably my least favorite one because
Instead
it
of saying
doesn't
solution,
because it doesn't make sense. Yeah.
ask as a noun. What's the ask?
I hear that a lot. I hear something is going to be a big unlock
Oh
quite
yeah.
often.
Double click's a good one. I have noticed that a few times, and it hasn't gotten up to the level of I hate it yet, but it probably will now. I'll probably find it in more and more places now that you mention it.
Yeah. Let's sync on that later.
Um, I've resisted a well actually joke right there. So, Brian, we'll go over to you for number two.
Okay. I think. Yeah, I'm jumping around a little bit too. Let's go with. Yeah, you know what? I'm plucking this one from the honorable mention into the real time list.
From honorable mention to the two slot? That's unheard of.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think one of my biggest pet peeves recently is around tipping and just how unbelievably out of control this has gotten. Just I know that I think it's entered the cultural zeitgeist with some of these commercials
that
that you're
Latin?
starting to see. No, I think it's a business term. Just like, I think there was a commercial, I forget what it was, where a doctor shows somebody a 15, 20%, 22% screen after the visit. I forget what the product was for, but the amount of shameless tipping going on or asking for tips is, I think, like we're so far beyond what used to be acceptable that I don't, like, especially with the machines now that just like default to 15, 20%. Like at a bar, it's like you used to tip $1 for a drink, right? Or 10%, depending on what your style is. But then, and then it's fine to adjust it for inflation. Like you could tip $1.50, maybe $2, but then just you have a couple drinks and they're asking for a 20% tip on it, or at a coffee shop. So it's just, when is it? It feels like as a consumer, I'm getting the short end of the stick because I just got to keep shelling out for tips all over the place, and yeah, it bothers me because you're just like letting the business off the hook. So like, because I think the thing that bothers me the most about it is not necessarily that you say no or whatever, but that there, I think, are some people who judge you for your tipping. And like it's like it's not your fault if you don't want to tip 20% on a coffee that you just poured me that required very little effort of you. But then some people like take it personally, or it's like, oh, like what's the problem? Just give them the 20% or whatever. And I feel like it's like that's backwards.
Sounds like tip policing.
Yeah, tipping and the tip police.
The service industry folk that obviously they listen to our podcast. They're not going to be happy with this one.
No.
But there's a couple aspects of shame involved. You said shameless requesting of the tips.
Yeah.
There's also the shame when they flip that giant touch screen around and they show everyone in line. What are you going to do? Everyone's going to see you click the no thanks button, or I just go for the middle button. I just default to hitting the middle button because I feel the societal pressure.
Society tax.
Society tax.
And they've anchored you, right? I've even seen now like 20% being the low, and then you get like 25% and 30%, or even more egregious than that at times. Yeah, one of the worst I've seen recently is the guy who was standing at the door of a live music venue charging a cover to get in wanted a tip for charging me a fucking cover to go into this place. I'm like, you want a tip on you charging me money? Like, that's your one job? What service are you providing here? I think this is a great audible here by Brian. I actually had this on my list going into the show and then bumped it right before we started into my honorable mention. I refer to it as post-pandemic tip culture. I think it's really gotten out of hand. At the beginning of the pandemic, I think a lot of people wanted to help businesses stay afloat, and people working in some of these businesses that were taking on a larger risk by actually being in person. So it made sense. But then they just kind of like carried that forward as we've come out of the pandemic. And I personally used to think of myself as kind of like a tip jar socialist. I took pride in tipping, and now I'm quite pissed off with all of this tipping. It's definitely gotten out of hand.
A couple of Republicans on the podcast here.
Your bouncer cover charge story actually just reminded me of a quick this one's a cross between the internet police culture and tipping. Little less so on tipping, but a few months ago they opened this like hotel nearby, opened like a music room, like a club, and somebody on Reddit was like, hey, like, is this going to be like all the time? Like, it used to be just on weekends until 4 a.m, and now it's like all week long, and it's just like, this sucks. Like, I just moved here and I can't sleep. And then one of the comments was just like, so you just want them to like fire like their hundreds of staff and like all these people not to have jobs just because like you want to get sleep? And it was the most unhinged response to a very, I think, normal complaint that I think captures the essence of the police culture with a little bit of the, so you don't care about anybody except yourself, tipping culture.
A lot of times people just need to complain just to get it out there. They don't actually need the thing to be fixed, but you just need to let the complaint out to get it off your chest.
They want to be seen or heard.
Exactly. Exactly.
And pay your freaking employees a living wage. How about that? You two, capitalists over there, should probably identify with this.
I pay well.
Whenever people download my software, I ask them to tip.
Nice.
20% per usage.
Josh, you're up at number 2.
So my number 2 is the wrong condiments. Do not have the fucking wrong condiments. Like, think yellow mustard instead of deli mustard, Tabasco sauce instead of like a better hot sauce. These are easy decisions, people. Don't fuck them up. If you want to give people options, if you want to have the deli mustard and the shitty yellow mustard, that's fine. But don't just assume that I'm going to be okay with eating the shittier condiment. So don't just give me yellow mustard. Very annoying.
Where are you going where mustard is a prime condiment? The yellow mustard at that.
Soft pretzel shops. I am going to places, purveyors of sandwiches. Lots of different places. Even like sometimes I'll throw a little deli mustard and mix it up with some ketchup and dip my fries in there. But if it's yellow mustard, it's gross.
You do deli mustard ketchup mix for the fry dip?
If available. I'm okay eating fries without that. If you give me like a nice aioli, again, like give me an aioli mayonnaise. Don't give me just plain up mayonnaise. No.
You want a fancy condiment in general? There's a lot of different condiments out there.
I would say it doesn't have to be fancy. Like, there are some hot sauces that are cheaper than Tabasco sauce because you're paying for the marketing there, right? But it's got to be like the good hot sauce. Like it could be Cristal, which is, I think, cheaper than Tabasco. I'll need a fact checker here. We still haven't hired a real-time fact checker, but
still looking for applications. The High Five Podcast 55@gmail.com. Send in your fact checking applications, please.
And a 20%
it's still not
tip.
Yeah, you work only on tips as our fact checker.
It's going to be a low paying job from this group.
No paying job. It's going to be a no paying job. You'll be sent lots of video links with no context, and you'll only earn tips.
I can't say that I identify with this condiment one. It seems like you really don't like Tabasco and you don't like French's yellow mustard. Is that the main that's the main takeaway?
Yeah, the mustard in particular. Well, the hot sauce too. I would say yeah, both of them. But again, like throw aioli in there. You know, I'm sure there's some other whack sauces that I'm being served, like a shitty hummus maybe if I'm eating some like Mediterranean or Arabian
Labne.
food. Yeah, some labneh that's not quite up to snuff. I assume that's a sauce. I've seen it on a menu before.
I like Tabasco on my eggs, so I do get annoyed if I'm having a breakfast meal and they don't have Tabasco as an option because I think that the more mature hot sauces, the thicker hot sauces are better for lunch or dinner foods. And I like the vinegar of Tabasco on the eggs. So I can kind of identify with you there on the hot sauce front, but I haven't really thought of a condiment. Brian, do you have any condiment peeves?
I think you'd be upset. Josh would be very upset to eat anything at my house because I have virtually no condiments. I'm not really a ketchup guy. I don't really like mustard. I'll put some olive oil on stuff and some lime, but that's really about it.
What are you, a vegan?
Some
I
people who don't like condiments do it because of nutritional needs, Brett, and you should be better to understand that some of us
well,
are different
actually,
than
yeah.
you.
Yeah, wow. I didn't even consider somebody having no condiments. I just figured, no, that's like
Okay.
psychopathic behavior.
Is no condiments worse than the wrong condiments?
I think so. I think it's worse.
That's ridiculous. That's racist, I think.
There is a condiment that I want to try that I read about online the other day. Banana ketchup.
What is that?
I don't know
What
yet,
it sounds
but
like?
yeah, it's ketchup sauce made with bananas, and I think it's Caribbean, and they put it on like platanos or jerk chicken, and it's in the article sounded really good, and so I think maybe if the banana ketchup people are listening, you guys could easily become a sponsor of the show. Send over some free banana ketchup samples, and we can see if Josh can fit it into his condiment tree.
How about Brett here just like naming the two Caribbean foods that it came to mind? And he's like, oh, yeah, they put it on these things, jerk chicken and platanos. Like, I don't think there was any research done there. I would like to ask the question, though, if Brian is eating without any condiments, does that mean that he is raw dogging his food? I think so.
It's just raw dogging his edibles.
I mean, if yeah,
Yeah.
I do. If we want to double click on it real quick, I would say that honey mustard is one that I don't have it at the moment, but that's probably my favorite condiment.
Wow. It's esoteric condiment. That's not one of the mainstays. What are you doing with the honey mustard chicken nugget dip?
Yeah, sometimes on a salad.
I like a good honey mustard. I'd much prefer honey mustard than just that regular yellow mustard.
Yeah,
Fries also, I feel like are good dipped in honey mustard.
or a hot honey mustard, like a spicy hot honey.
Josh has a lot of mustard opinions. So we're this podcast is very anti French's regular yellow mustard, but
What
pro fancy mustards.
Where do you fall on the spice spectrum in terms of like heat? Do you like spicy foods?
I do like spicy foods. Yeah.
So if it's spicy but no condiment, that's still a no go.
I mean, if it's super well seasoned, I might not. I don't put condiments on everything now. It's not like I'm putting condiments on like into my water when I drink
Ketchup
it.
on steak.
Yeah, and is milk when put into coffee a condiment? I don't think. Yeah, no ketchup on my steak. If you want to serve me like a really well seasoned steak with no condiments, that's fine. But like, don't have the wrong condiments for things that I need condiments for. So particularly like if you give me food that needs condiments and then you have the wrong condiment on top of that, and then there's certain foods that just go by nature with condiments all the time. Soft pretzel being a great example. Soft pretzel is really just a vehicle to deliver mustard into my mouth. So give me the right mustard.
Okay, the right mustard peeve is Josh's number two. All right, just to recap for the listeners before we jump into our number one pet peeves here. Brian went At number five, people who walk around with their head in their phones. Internet police culture slash the well, actually. Then playing things out loud in public spaces. Number two, excessive tipping or shame tipping culture. Josh went at number five, not making room for passing in all circumstances, not just on the roadway. That was where I was thinking he was going first, but a lot of other examples provided as well. Number four, sending me links to videos with no context. You need to tell Josh what kind of reaction you're looking for. Number three, overuse of business jargon and buzzwords. Number two, wrong condiments. Specifically, don't have the yellow mustard. Any other kind of mustard is fine, but don't have the cheap French's yellow mustard. Which I will say, I do love that French's mustard on a corn dog. I think that's the perfect combo. But we've spent too much time on condiments already, so let's jump into our number ones. Brian, you're up. Number one pet peeve.
All right, I think this one was close, and I'm gonna have to go with as a big consumer of just online news, like goes from like current events to politics to like cultural stuff, like show reviews, stuff like that. I have recently found myself really irked by I think just like the style of journalism that seems to be like really that seems to like really emphasize I think this is kind of like an offshoot of the well actually thing where it like just sensationalizes a lot of like current events using just like very what's the word I'm looking for? Very just like clickbaity headlines to get you to be like, oh well, actually, this like episode of The Bear was like actually like really misogynist, and like here's why, or just like things like that feel like they're just like there to kind of like trigger you, but they're also just like this like default stuff that I seem to find. Maybe it's what I read. But it bothers me because it's like a lot of it is not really like that. It's like not much analysis. A lot of it is just like more policing journalism and like sensationalism.
Could we get like a succinct title for that pet
I don't know.
peeve?
I
Like
don't
how
have
would you
one.
sum that up? No.
I kind of audibled on that one, but from one of my other ones,
That might have cost you the game there,
I
buddy.
think so.
Um, um, if I could put my own spin on this news journalism pet peeve, I feel that I almost always find out about when it's Democrat, Republican. In the US, things are pretty much like one side or the other. I feel like a lot
Yeah.
of news is just one side or the other. I find out about the thing the other side did mostly from the reaction. I see a ton of reaction news. I don't see a ton of um, the original, what do you call it? Infraction.
Oh, here,
I see just,
yeah. Here's a good example of it. So what when there was that Netflix freak out about Dave Chappelle's stand-up special, everything that I read online about it virtually was like, I didn't watch it, but here's the transcript of what he said, and it was like, do you not understand how comedy works? Where like there's like sarcasm and there like just the like reporting on like here's something that I did not watch, but like I I read it and like here's my opinion about it. So I feel like there's like too much opinion out there and not enough like, okay, well, like if I'm going to talk about it, I watched it and here's my reaction and here's why. So it feels very lazy.
there's 1% of the news and coverage is factual, covering what happened, and then 99% is all reaction and opinion. So it's not even news at that point. For me, the news is like, let's cover what happened, and then now we're calling news like everybody's opinions and reactions. Josh might have some insight on this, being a former journalist.
Yeah, we're really talking about the gathering versus like the processing of the news. And Brian apparently does not trust the process. I get it. It is more expensive, I think, to do the gathering. I think that's why a lot of organizations have gone in this direction. And again, to his point, clicks are money. So I get why it's happening, but I agree that it is very annoying and very problematic for our society. I can be as serious as I've ever been on this podcast.
Go on to your number one, Josh.
Problematic is probably what's on my honorable mentions of words that I don't like.
Well, number one, my number one. This is kind of like a preemptive, well, actually, in a way, and it is assuming that I ascribe. Brett, you kind of called this one early on. Assuming I ascribe to your view on marriage and to a lesser degree on parenthood. So I declared early in this podcast life as the pro-divorce candidate. It's a stance I'm proud of. I even fancy myself something of a pioneer in a movement I call divorce thinking. I would have even finished and published a book on the topic already if I prescribed to the sunk cost fallacy, which I do not because I am pro-divorce, divorcing ideas, divorcing people, whatever, because there's no shame in not finishing something you've started. The worst thing about getting a divorce, though, I will say, at least a clean divorce without any like heartbreak, heavy financial loss, or kids involved, because there are actual bad things with those kinds of divorces. Is the people that are giving you like a puppy dog look when you tell them that you're getting a divorce, as if two people who can't stand each other going their separate ways is a bad thing. It's like the saddest freaking thing people have ever seen in the world, as if ending a marriage is like genocide or something. And you, the happy divorcee who has been given a second lease on a love life, you have to fight back like a shit-eating grin that you'd like to give, because I'm the asshole here, apparently, if I say, no, this is a great thing, especially to somebody who is married or engaged. It's ridiculous, and that is the end of my rant.
So society's stance on divorce is your pet peeve.
It's really people who think that I should think that divorce is a horrible thing that can't take my pro-divorce stance.
I got you.
Interesting.
It reminds me. It reminds me of the Shane Gillis bit about people that don't know anybody with Down syndrome. When he says that he has family that have Down syndrome, and he goes, and their reaction is, "Oh, oh," and meanwhile the people with Down syndrome are having the most fun time of all of us. It's a really good bit of his, I think. But similar vein, the divorce. So it's I don't know what to call that one.
I feel like these number ones got really personal.
Yeah, they did. They did. Divorce thinking, or not anti-divorce thinking, is Josh's pet peeve.
Yeah, I would say really my number one and two are all about making assumptions that people should not be making.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that was like the tone of some of my most hard to articulate positions where it's like you don't actually know, so you shouldn't make assumptions.
That I feel like that could have been a pet peeve criteria. That's almost like a lack of awareness. Lack of awareness as a criteria. It seemed like that was a theme for you guys, and then making assumptions when you don't need to make those assumptions was another kind of theme through the lists. Any honorable mentions that you guys want to touch on that didn't make your top 5?
Oh yeah.
Okay, all right.
We're going to be here a while.
We're gonna. This is the top 10. I've got some quick ones and then some more assumptions based ones. When I'm at a restaurant and it takes them forever to bring the bill, that can easily ruin a meal for me. Like when it's just like hard to get somebody's attention and they won't, like it just takes a long time to get out of there. That's one that I become like just irrationally upset. Even after
Europe,
like
we're looking at you. Yeah.
Yeah, come on now, Europe, step it up.
Yeah. Just like people who are, it's like, I just want to get out of here. I want to help you turn this table over. It's another, I think, New York specific one. It is New York specific because I've seen it done the right way other places. But in New York, like bikers like bicyclists and like people who have electric bikes, mopeds are just like out of control on the street. Like they don't obey any traffic laws, and then they get upset. Like if you have the right of way and they're just like coming down the street, like and they almost hit you, they act like you're the problem. So it's especially because like they kind of they're setting the bike movement back. There are a lot. Well, because like in New York, there's been this big push about like let's add bike lanes, like let's not make it such a car heavy city. But then these people are like riding down like the wrong way in one way, so like almost hitting you. And so I feel like they're setting the movement back because you just like can't stop at a red light, you know. And it's like I've seen it in other cities where it's like, yeah, you stop at the red light, you follow the traffic signals. So big pet peeve of mine as a non-biker. But I like to think that if I were a biker, I would obey the traffic laws. Um, and
Another anti-European take, I would say. Or
I'll,
maybe the bikers in Europe
no,
are following the
that's
rules.
pro. Yeah, I mean, when I was in Berlin, they all stop at the red light, you know, and there's like they wait for it to change, even if there's no cars coming. You know, here people like barely look; it's green, like they go. And I've seen videos of like people getting hit by cars while they're like running red lights, and then then the people online and we're like, oh my god, the poor biker. And it's like, you should have looked both ways. And then the random acts of virtue signaling is a big pet peeve of mine. And so I think even when people like don't really understand what they're saying, they just like feel the need to drop like these signals to people, that it bothers me because I think it's very like it's very insular to your community. So like having lived in Florida in like a very conservative area and then moving to Brooklyn and like having lived in LA, it's like a problem it's a problem in all of them. We're just like surrounded by all the same people. And so you all just like start to think the same way. And so you like start to say shit that's just like, oh yeah, we're all part of the same team. But I think it made me realize that it's like, oh, these places are like much more similar than they are different. They're very tribe-like. But it just basically like nobody's like thinking anymore. Everyone's just like really preoccupied with making sure that you know where I stand on stuff.
Yeah, that is annoying for sure. Josh, any honorable mentions?
Yeah, a couple. You know, I post-pandemic tip culture on my list. I mentioned that early. Or the city of Boston is on my list. Using arbitrary voting to argue that like one player is better than another. Also being like, oh, well, this guy got the MVP, so he's obviously better. Like, no, not necessarily. Those votes are weird. And then lastly, like whack storylines on great shows. So you're like taking up valuable real estate in, you know, what is only like say a 30-minute or hour-long show with these storylines that are going nowhere. And you're like, come on, you're wasting my time, but more importantly, you're wasting your own time. You have limited screen time. Let's get down to the storylines that are good.
Is this a dig at Damon's Luigi's Mansion story arc?
I don't love it. I'll say that I don't love it. Got a little bit better. No spoilers, but yeah, I feel like it was mostly a lost season for Damon.
The Tully
so far,
kid was great.
Yeah, agreed. Well, I saw a lot of internet people talking about comparing him to Leanna Mormont from the original series.
He's not better than Leanna Mormont, but at least not yet. But he had a good showing last episode, that's for sure.
Did you see that the last episode got leaked?
I did not see that.
Parts of it got leaked, yeah.
Is that next week, the last episode?
This week, this Sunday.
This coming Sunday?
And I saw that had happened. I did not try to. I tried to avoid any spoilers. We should do a future top 5 on leaks and spoilers.
Are they ending the storyline in this next episode? Or are they going for another season?
No, they've got at least another one, maybe a 4th one. Unclear.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I think that's the max.
I don't know if you guys watched Westworld, but I was really into Westworld season 1, and then there was this kind of in season 2 there was this like one episode where they went off into they had some Native American storyline that didn't I couldn't tell what was going on, if it was related at all to the original story. So I think the writers rooms, they probably trying to fill up a season sometimes, and so they come up with these other storylines that don't really make sense. I also get very bothered when an action movie spends a lot of time on a love story. It makes
Yeah.
no sense to me. Like I'm trying to see some cars blow up. I'm not trying to understand the love connection between these two characters.
I have a comment on your noting of the Native American storyline in Westworld. I feel like you also had that same stance in your U.S. history class as a kid. You're like, wait, can we just talk about the white guys? Why are we talking about this genocide of the Native Americans? Can we get back to the white guys with wigs, please, teacher?
Why are we deviating from the main storyline?
All right, so I'm definitely going with Brian for the winner of this week's top five. It was a close call. I would say Brian. I almost didn't go with Brian because of the news sucks number one. I thought that was a pretty weak pet peeve. Couldn't really put my finger on what he was complaining about. But Josh switching up the number 5 to the number 3, I think that just off to a bad start doing that. And then I think overuse of buzzwords and labeling it as pandering. I don't really mess with pandering. I'm not a big pandering fan. And that pet peeve is a little bit tired. Me and you have been going over business jargon for a long time. So I'm giving the winner's rant this week over to Brian to close us out. Brian, the floor is yours once again.
On the topic of the news sucks, I don't like that they're spoiling all the Olympic games for us in the news headlines when I don't have time to watch it during the workday because I'm doing work. So they should either not do the Olympics outside of the U.S. so that I can watch it, or they shouldn't report it so that I can act surprised later when the U.S. wins the gold. But thanks for listening to my rants.
Another anti-Europe take from Brian. Why don't they just start the games at 3 a.m.?
Why don't they just
so we can watch it on our time?
Do the games around my schedule.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. I hope you guys feel cleansed, getting all of that off your chest, all those annoyances, and we'll catch you guys next week.
Comment some good pet peeves. Send them in.
Yeah. Great pet peeves this week. I will just say that Brett clearly showing off his wedding ring on camera. The fact that my number 1 was pro-divorce, I think also might have caused